This is the Visvin Reddy. I'm not the one with the money. I'm the one with the looks. What they've done in South Africa is white-owned business. They said we need to capture the ANC.
How so?
Life has become worse than it was even before 1994.
What does MK say about BE?
You got to listen to this. This is very important. 84% of South Africans are Black African. 7% are white.
What are we doing about the youth, though?
Only 1% of white people are unemployed in the country today. Only 1%. But the Black African community, it's about 60%. I want to thank Ramaphosa. I want to thank Fakile, Fax, and also...
Who's that?
Fax. I don't believe it's a bad thing that I belong to different political parties.
A lot of people do assume that the strategy is interference and eventually MK will be in a coalition with ANC.
On election day, I'm going to be at the beach. So I'm an MK member. I'm not the spokesman of MK. I'd rather just tell you that up front. But I'm a member of MK. And I'd like you to know that MK is a new party. It was only formed, it only became known in December 16th, when President Zuma indicated that he's supporting the MK party and that he will be voting for the MK party. And that immediately saw our membership soar, S-O-A-R, by over 1 million.
Wow.
Sure.
Currently, I'd like to give you some information which many people don't know. Our membership sits at 10.3 million.
Jeez.
That makes us the largest political formation in Africa. So
Wow.
people want to know, where do we get our money from? You know, our money comes from our membership. Each of those members pay 10 rands to become a member of MK. So that's gonna tell you that if our membership alone had to vote in this election, we will get a clear majority win, comfortable win.
10 million members.
10 million, yes.
How,
We've got
how,
over
how do
10
you guys
million.
get that number?
That's how much we've got in our account for membership fees.
Oh, yeah.
10 million people paid 10 rands each.
100 million.
Yes,
106 million.
yes.
Wow. Okay.
So people want to know, how is it that MK gets its money? That's one way. And the other, of course, is through
10.6.
the support of ordinary people. Our campaign is something very unusual. It's unlike any other political party. We're not heavily funded. President Zuma has made it very clear that we are not going to be taking money from white monopoly capital. Because remember, those business, they capture political parties because they want them to run a particular agenda. And that's why South Africa is where it is today, 30 years after democracy. The only people to benefit are a minority, white business, and of course, some ANC leaders. But the majority of South Africans, life has become worse than it was even before 1994. Well, you'll get the ANC saying that we built so many houses. RDP houses is actually like a kennel, a dog's kennel. That's where they put people. And you don't give them a job. How do you expect them to live there? Many people have got RDP houses today. They sell those RDP houses and go back and stay in a shack because it's more affordable for them to stay in the shack.
I heard
than
that on
stay-
the radio, actually.
Yeah.
Someone said they had to buy one on the radio. They bought an RD.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
aren't they given?
Yeah, they are good.
Yeah, but they're being sold now because those people that have the house, they'd rather sell them for 10,000 rands and have the 10,000 rand than live in a house, have no food, have no clothes, have nothing. So they take the 10,000 and they go back and live in a shack where they don't pay for rent and don't pay for lights, water, and all that kind of things. So that is the reality of South Africa. So coming back to this whole thing about the growth of the MK. So I am here not as the official spokesperson. So the party is new. We have interim leadership. And it's important that I bring this up. So what I'm going to tell you today is probably information you don't read about in the paper. And so if you're listening to this, make sure you listen to the end, because I'm going to give you information from the horse's mouth about MK Party and why things are happening. A lot of information that's coming through from the media is deeply filtered and it's propagandist. because you must remember that MK is a threat not only to opposition parties like the ANC, for example, or the ruling party, but it's also a threat to white monopoly capital. White monopoly capital is something that's real. Some people would like you to believe that this was a figment of someone's imagination, this white monopoly capital. No, it's not. It's
What
not.
is it?
Right. You see, if you look at South Africa's mineral resources is worth trillions of rands. In fact, South Africa is the third richest country in Africa and one of the wealthiest countries in the world in terms of our minerals. So we supply the whole world with things like coal, platinum, manganese, gold, diamonds. I mean, our diamonds were found on the Queen's crown, right? The crown jewels.
Yeah.
So you can see the wealth of the country, but the people of the country do not get to benefit from the wealth. Now, if you look, let's understand this concept. Let's go to the Saudi Arabia, where they have oil. If you are a resident of that country, you live a comfortable life. You don't have to work because they use the oil, the profits from oil. They employ foreigners to come and do the work. You get state aid, state grants. You don't have to work if you're a resident of the country. So you benefit from the wealth of the land.
The minerals.
Now, what they've done in South Africa is white-owned business. These are the mining companies, the insurance companies, the commercial banks, all these, the tobacco companies, SA breweries, and all of these companies, your Shell, your petrol companies. What they've done is they've had the same white owners that have owned these companies from before democracy, even during apartheid. So when we had a democracy, they were concerned that the new government, the ANC at the time, was going to nationalize these institutions and take profits from there and use it to develop the country and share the wealth so that they can create a better life for all South Africans. But what these white companies did, they said, we need to capture the ANC. And they went around identifying key leaders in the ANC. And one of them was Ramaphosa, the main one. He's the biggest beneficiary of the patronage that was offered by white business. So they gave them free shares. You got to ask yourself a question. How did Ramaphosa become a billionaire? How did he become one of the wealthiest people in Africa? Did he invent anything? Is he like Elon Musk or like Warren Buffett? Nothing. What business did he have? He had no business.
Doesn't he have big shares in the McDonald's group?
Correct. How
Uber.
did he get it? He never bought it. He never bought these shares. Ramaphosa came from exile. He was in London. He was the Secretary General of a mining union, and suddenly he just amassed all these great wealth. He even left politics to get full time into business. So he became the chairman of McDonald's. He became the major shareholder of McDonald's. He also owns some fuel companies that supplies fuel to Eskom when we have load shedding. So he benefits when we have load shedding. He also owns companies, Shanduka and others, that supplies coal to Eskom. So when we have no load shedding, he's also making money there. He was also the chairman of Lonmin Mines. If you recall the time when workers at Lonmin Mines went on strike and the police were called in under his instruction, and scores of people were killed. It's still a matter that's hanging in the air, has not been resolved as yet. His influence in government to protect business interests. Even Donald Trump, as a president and as a businessman, does not use his influence in government to benefit his own business. But in South Africa, the president of this country has a direct interest in companies that do business with the government. Can you see the paradox, the irony, the deep irony in what we have? So you find we have a president over here, Ramaphosa, whose interest is not in the people of this country, but it's in ensuring that the white companies that he represents in government will benefit. So there was a time when he left government. He went into full-time into business, right? Now, when President Zuma became the president, he started shaking the very foundations on which big business was built. He started talking about things like radical economic transformation. It was only during President Zuma's tenure that we found that other players were coming into the economic space that was dominated by white business. The reality, if you look at our country today, 30 years into democracy, you got to listen to this. This is very important, especially for a young person. Our land, 73% of our land is in the ownership of 7% of the population. 7% of the population, which is whites, own 73% of our land.
Okay.
And how did they get that land? They came here as colonizers. They took the land. They never even paid for the land. And today, black people don't have access. In fact, black people only own 4% of the land.
Wasn't a lot of that land bartered
Uh,
historically?
It could have been bartered, but it was...
So wouldn't that not be taking it? I'm playing devil's advocate.
No, you're
here.
quite right. But most of this land, you go and ask your grandparents, they'll tell you. These white guys will come here on the horseback. They will ride. They'll put a peg. They'll ride the whole day. And whatever tract of land they cover during the day, before the sun sets, will be their land. That's how you've got all the sugarcane plantations, which is now Tongaat Hewlett's, and all this vast tracts of land that was owned by white families. That's one example of how whites exploited the African continent. That's one of the ways. The next thing is to go into the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange is dominated by white-owned business. There's just a sprinkling. I call it mustard seeds in a room full of mayonnaise. Understand that analogy? Mm-hmm. That's how the JSE looks currently. The only black players you have is Ramaphosa's brother-in-law, Patrice Motsepe, who plays a role there. And that too, these are puppets of white business. They are not genuine businessmen. They're only puppets. Now, on the JSE, and this is where MK Party is different and stands out from every other political party. We are the only party that will show South Africans how we will create a stream of income, new streams of income that will give you a social package that will free you from the shackles of apartheid and of poverty. South Africa has got a poverty rate of 55%, 38% of whom barely manage with just one meal a day. That's a reality. That's SA's information. It's not mine. So if you want to live in a fool's paradise and think that we everything is good in this country, that the ANC has done something remarkable, you are mistaken. You don't know the real South Africa. The real South Africa is that the majority of our people are worse off today than they were before.
Okay. So I got a question.
So let me finish.
Sorry, finish.
So I said we're going to create new streams of income.
Yes.
And that streams is going to come from imposing a super tax on those companies on the JSE that have reserves of over 10, not million, not billion, but trillion rands that sits there. I just heard just the other day that BHB Bulletin, which is number one on the JSE, it pays its senior executives, chief executive officers and so on, over 200 million rands a year.
Bonus.
Big money.
No, that's a salary.
Salary.
That bonus is separate.
Sure.
That's a salary. There are CEOs in this country whose companies are on the JSE that earn over 200 million rands a year.
I want to play devil's advocate on this.
How much is that a month?
It's like 15 million
It's
a month.
15 million a month.
It's a lot of money.
Right?
Plus minus.
But
Don't kill me.
where I want to come in is, okay, so you've got these big companies, right?
Yeah.
These big companies do create jobs, all right? But when it comes to, obviously, when you have to, when we look at the salaries of CEOs, yes, it's a lot of money. Now, if that CEO or whatever didn't exist in that industry, in that business, what would happen to that business? Would it collapse? And if it collapsed, what is the repercussions of that? And does that mean a lot of people lose those jobs if he is not at the helm of the business? Is there a certain role, and is that why he gets paid what he gets paid? Someone is always going to get paid more than another person, right?
Now,
Without that person, what happens?
Most of the CEOs of these companies are foreigners.
Right.
So it makes you wonder, why is it that they wouldn't go to maybe France, where they come from, or Europe, or one of those countries, come to South Africa? If you go into another study that was conducted, found that South African executives are paid the highest in the world. Now, my point is that for a company to be able to afford to pay that kind of exorbitant amounts to their top executive, the management, it tells you that they obviously have enough money to make. And what it becomes is a tax, sort of a tax rebate, as it were. Because if they declare these monies as profit, they pay a super tax. So they use as company expenses. The other thing that many of these companies have done, which has slipped under the radar, is that they have taken their operations, their head office operations, out of South Africa and moved them overseas. So they created small little offices overseas and now call them international companies in South Africa. And that is just a way of trying to avoid paying taxes. Now, for me and for MK Party, we will nationalize any industry in this country that benefits from our people and our resources. We will take a percentage of whatever monies that companies make and put it back into the economy. We will use that money. We're not going to go and cause increased taxation. We're going to reduce taxes. We're going to reduce the price of petrol in this country to under 10 rands a litre. And that's going to be through the nationalization of Sasol. Sasol is a company that was developed by the previous apartheid government. It created alternative technology where it makes fuel from coal, and the cost to make Sasol fuel in this country is 6 rands a litre. So if you remove taxes, you remove everything else. By the way, our fuel taxes and levies in South Africa is close to 40% that goes to government taxes.
What do they do with that? What do they do with that 40%?
Well, it goes back into the into treasury, and that's used for your government expenses, for things like maybe your grants, whatever government is spending money on. So what we are saying as MK is that we'll create an alternative stream of income so that people's taxation will drop, the cost of fuel will drop, and we'll be able to create an economy that's people-centered and not driven by these industries. We want to be able to bring back into the country, we want to increase production. We do not want to rely on imports. We want to start becoming an exporter. We want our people to start making things in the country. We want them to export things. We want a garden in every home. We want to start making our own petrol. We want to export the petrol so others can buy petrol. Sasol fuel is sold to neighboring countries that pay more than us. Do you know, if you want cheaper petrol, go to Botswana. It comes from Sasol, but you're paying less in Botswana.
Oh, geez.
Right. So that's the reality.
But don't you need their buy-in? Don't you need these industries buy-in and support in whatever it is that you look to do? Because what I'm afraid of is, okay, so you've got the super tax, you've got all these things. Then those companies are going to say, you know what, actually, we don't want to do business in South Africa anymore. There's no benefit for us. We're out. And then what happens to the economy if that happens?
That's the best thing that can happen. You see, Shell has said that they're going, this is news now. Mm-hmm. So this is happening now, currently. Mm-hmm. Shell has said that they're closing up their operations in South Africa. And you're probably going to get other companies as well that's going to start doing the same things. Now, Shell is one of those typical companies that took on board, as part of its directors and board members, ANC leaders that were sitting on Shell. There are many ANC leaders that were collecting millions of rands, right? Simply because they kept the majority shareholding in Shell to be white-owned and foreign-owned. Let Shell go. The same Shell, why can't it be operated in South Africa by local people? Tell me why. This is where MK comes in.
But isn't
We want
Shell
to
a
transfer.
foreign company?
No, they're a foreign company based in South Africa supplying fuel to South Africans. Why do you need? You don't need a foreign company. You need a South African company that can use companies like Sasol. We can use Sasol. We can start to build Sasol as a company owned by South Africa, a company that makes our own fuel in this country. Why do we have to rely so heavily on oil companies that rely on the crude oil and subject to foreign exchange rules and regulations? So what had happened was these big petroleum companies, they came in here and they captured ANC leaders. And that's the reason why they still exist today. So we are saying that if they want to go, they must go. The infrastructure we have here in the country, and are you telling me that South African people do not have the expertise or the ability to be able to manage and run these companies on their own? We are being made to believe that we have an inferior kind of thinking. We are being made to believe that we are slaves of the West, that it's only the West that can develop our country. That is the mentality of the colonizer. And some of us have developed that mentality even up to today. So we are saying that we prepare. This is our country. We've got the expertise here that we can make this country work. And one of the things that President Zuma has done during his presidency was to open up that economy, to allow more local people to access that economy. That's why during his presidency, you had more black millionaires that were developed in South Africa than under any other presidency before. So that is what MK is going to bring to the country. And you know, it's not something that you should be afraid of. People say, oh, every time you see MK, you see them wearing this military wear and looking like soldiers. And are we going to have like a big military coup in the country? And just earlier today, I had an interview where the guy said that some people are afraid of Mkonto, that Mkonto is like a big military wing and so on. And I said, you know, for us, we are in a war. We're really in a war. And people people cannot see the invisible enemy. The invisible enemy out there is the capitalists who are out here to exploit our people for their own benefit and for their profits. That's what that's the reality. That's a war we are in. They waged that war ever since apartheid was demolished. They've been waging that war. And how they've been successful is they found weaklings within the ANC. They've captured them by giving them money. And today they are in government to protect the interests of the enemy. So to tackle that enemy, you need the strength of a military wing. Do not underestimate MK. Don't make a mistake of thinking that MK is a Mickey Mouse organization. It is not. MK is the former military wing of the ANC that broke away. MK is the intelligence wing of the ANC that broke away. So this organization, this political party comes with knowledge, information that no other political party has. And it is that information that is going to set our people free. Is it any wonder that the ANC, which is threatened, terribly threatened by the existence of the MK party, is so busy keeping us in court?
Yes.
Somebody needs to advise the ANC that doing this is giving us free publicity. And I want to thank the ANC today. I want to thank Ramaphosa and Fakile. I want to thank Fakile, Fax, and also...
Who's that?
Who?
Who?
Fax.
Figile.
Yeah.
Oh,
Fikile.
okay. So we're not going to beep that.
Yeah, so I want to thank Fakile and also thank Ramaphosa, because they are doing us a great big favor. They're keeping us in court. First, they don't want our president on the ballot paper. Then there are rumors around that they've paid people, leaders within MK, to come and sabotage MK, to try and deregister MK. That is the extent to which they are going. Now, why would a political party do all of this if they were not threatened by us?
Why don't you guys work together?
That is impossible. We can never work together because what we know about the ANC is something that many people don't know. We are exposing it today. President Ramaphosa has come out, President Zuma has come out to explain in detail exactly what is going on. You've got a bunch of sellouts in the ANC. You've got traitors in the ANC. And the reality is that the membership and voters of ANC have caught up. They've caught up with this ANC. And that's the reason why they're going to give the ANC the boot in this coming election. Not the vote. They're going to give them the boat.
The boat.
Yes.
A lot of people do assume that the strategy is interference and eventually MK will be in a coalition with ANC. A lot of people.
I want to
believe that.
state categorically. In fact, one of our leaders, but he's now been subsequently fired. Now, you're probably hearing a lot of MK members getting fired.
What
leaders.
happened there? Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you this. You should be very lucky that that is how we operate. If we find people that are being captured, like the ANC knows Ramaphosa is captured. The ANC knows that. They know that he's got all these shares in businesses because it was a means by this big business to keep him on board. But they've done nothing about it. They've done nothing about Pala Pala. They've done nothing about Lonmin Mines and his involvement in Lonmin Mines. Why is it that they keep him there? Because those members in parliament and other cabinet members are also benefiting from his involvement in big business. Now, if he was in MK, he would have been given the boot a long time ago. So when we sense that any of our members have been captured by anybody, they go. They go. And when I speak of we, I say we will get rid of them. That's the membership of the party. You see, it works like this. When the leadership takes a decision, it becomes binding on every one of us. That decision by the leadership becomes our decision as the members. We own it. We own that decision. So this is what is going to become after the elections as well. Incompetent leaders in the MK party will be kicked out. The membership will kick them out. We can't have a minister who heads up electricity or ESCOM and the lights fail and he still keeps his job. If you are working in a factory and you were given a particular role in the factory and in that department they're constantly having disasters, you'll be given one warning, second warning, third warning doesn't exist. No, you go out. So why is it that in government, under ANC government, under Ramaphosa's government, you have these ministers that are heading up failed departments where South Africans are paying the price every single day and yet they still keep their jobs? Why is that?
I don't know.
Visvin, you've been a part of a few parties during your political career. The Minority Front being the very start of it. You did join the Democratic Alliance as well. And then you were part of the ANC, correct?
Tell us about that one.
So you've transitioned across many parties, right? How is this message or the strategy not being utilized prior to the development of the MK?
I think it's to the benefit of MK because, for one, I come with a wealth of knowledge behind me. I was the founder of the Minority Front, one of the founders with late Mr. Raj Bansi. I'm the only person in this country who was given a parliamentary seat in the National Assembly by the DA who turned it down. I didn't take it.
Why?
Because I found that the DA was, and it still is, it's even more racist now, it's a racist political party that has an agenda to advance white interests. And it wants to use black voters to do that. Now, the funny thing is that it actually backfired. This strategy of the DA is backfired because the whites in the DA, they saw it. And so they left the DA to join the Freedom Front. They said, we'd rather join a party that's openly saying that we support white interests. Be honest with your voters. Don't come here and say we're supporting the black cause, but then you want to advance another secret agenda. So I saw it firsthand within the DA.
How did you see it first?
Well, I was taken there for about 2 months. It was Tony Leon. They put me about number 3 on the list. I was even accepted to Parliament. And I saw they had different caucuses, a caucus for whites, where I used to be invited to the white caucus, a caucus for Indians, caucus for coloreds, and a caucus for blacks. So apartheid is practiced within the DA. The DA is something that I wouldn't even talk about because I know that the DA is going to take even further beating in this coming elections for the simple reason that it's failed black project where it used people like Musi Maimani, Herman Mashaba, and Lindiwe Mazibuko and others to try and lure the black votes because the DA realized that it needed to please and appease its funders. Remember, the DA gets considerable funding from Oppenheimers and others because they've convinced them that they can beat the ANC and they can become government. That's the reason why they've pumped over 165 million rand into the DA campaign. So every time, every election, they've been failing. And that's the reason why these funders have now split their money. They now went into funding Action SA, Rise Mzansi, and other parties like that, right? That's the reason why these funders, they've been now spreading their money. They fund the ANC through Ramaphosa. Ramaphosa, they keep him there. So these are the parties that form part of what I call the apartheid legacy. This is the apartheid legacy that they want to propagate in post-apartheid South Africa. So the DA will not get that black vote. That black vote is gone. And let's look at the demographics of this country.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, elections are still run along racial lines in this country. People still see a certain party belonging to a particular race and that race, etc. They still see the DA as a white party. Understand the demographics. 84% of South Africans are black African. 8% are colored. 7% are white. And Indians and Chinese make up 2% of the population. That's the demographics. Come on, guys. Face it. This is what is the reality here in the country. So if you want to style yourself as a white political party, you're only fishing off a pond of 7%. That's all that's in the pond for you. So for you to become a party that can become a majority, politics is about numbers. You don't have the numbers, you're not going to do anything. Your manifesto is not worth the paper it is written on, right? You need to bring in the black voters. So to bring the black voters, you came up with all kinds of strategies. It all failed. So the funders of the DA are no longer convinced of the DA's argument. The DA then came up with the Moonshot Pact to say that it is going to join other political parties, the IFP. Did you see what the IFP got in the last election? The IFP only got 800,000 votes. Come on. You're not going to see anything bigger than that. Only 800,000 votes in the last election. So the DA wants to convince its funders that through this Moonshot Pact of parties, it will be able to get 51% in the elections. That is a joke. And anybody who believes that, they're living in some cuckoo land. Because the DA is not a factor. The DA will never make it back into parliament as a majority, never be a majority. It even stands to lose the Western Cape.
Do you think that the
MK
will beat the DA in the election?
Definitely. Really? That is not even a question. Okay. Please don't ask people that question. They'll think twice about your knowledge of politics. Yeah. Let me explain to you why.
It's your debut election.
Let me explain to you why I say this. The ANC's debut election was in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's when they won.
Yeah. Now, the MK's debut election is in 2024. 2024 is going to be the 1994 for MK. Hear me, what I'm saying. Please listen very carefully to what I'm saying. The reason the ANC is so afraid, they're not telling you this. They've got their own intelligence, the ANC's own intelligence, that has already advised the ANC that they are in serious trouble because MK has eaten more than 60% of its support.
Sure.
We have two campaigns that we run. One is an overt campaign. One is a covert campaign. The overt campaign is what you see in the media. The covert campaign is what you don't see. That's where we intensify all our resources. We have infiltrated every single ANC branch in this country. Every ANC branch in this country.
How so?
Our members are in every ANC branch. They are there. So the problem with the ANC is that it runs its campaign on patronage. It wants to scare people. It tells people, we give you grant. You don't vote for ANC, your grants will be cut. We gave you this house. You don't vote for ANC, this house. That's what the ANC says. But the people out there, they have to portray a front like they support ANC. They wear the ANC shirts and all those things. Because if they don't, they won't get water when the water gets cut. The water tankers don't go to their houses because they're not ANC. They don't get food parcels, right? So that's how desperate people are. That is the election of poverty. And you thrive on that. You create the poverty. You give them 350 rands a month grant. You force people to depend on you for 350 rands a month. And then you exploit them. That's exactly what the ANC is doing. So let's come back to the question of the DA and MK. Our target is not the DA. We know the DA is going. DA is a lost cause. DA is split in so many ways now. So you should not even consider the DA as an option to take on the ANC. The only party in this country that has made significant inroads into ANC support, it's the MK party. The ANC's own intelligence have revealed that MK has eaten more than 60% of its support. Let's understand what we're talking about. In the 2019 election, the ANC had 10.3 million votes at its weakest. At its weakest, the ANC only had 56% in the last election. That's why it's important when we speak. We must speak from a point of knowledge,
and facts.
Understanding, and facts, not opinions. Ask John Steenhuisen the next time he's on your show, how many votes the DA got? The DA got 3.6 million. If the DA had 10 million, maybe 300,000 less than the ANC, I'll understand that they got a chance. 3.6 million. And they lost 7 members of parliament. They lost about 300,000 votes in that election. And they're going to drop even further in this election. DA knows it. DAs are numbers. They're not numbered. They're not even going to make it to be the official opposition. The official opposition in this country is probably going to be maybe the ANC. That's the way it looks. So we as MK have eaten 60% of the 10.3 million ANC voters. That's number one. In that election, 4 million ANC voters that voted before didn't vote for ANC. 2 million of them voted for other parties and 2 million stayed at home. They're migrating to MK. So that is the one fact that polls will not know. Because these polls are surveys are conducted by internationally owned companies or companies owned by DA leaders. It's been proven, right? DA leaders have an interest in these companies that say MK will get between 9 and 13% of the national vote, which in the last, that's a big number that many people say, that's quite a significant number. But I can tell you now that's hogwash, because those people that suggest that MK will get between 9 and 13% have no clue. Because I can tell you now that you go on you do this exercise, like the guys that did the podcast interview with me earlier today. They went unannounced to townships, to places where people converge, at the taxi ranks, at places like that. And they just did a quick interview. Which party? 9 out of 10 people said MK.
That's on the ground polling.
Ground polling. Not based on a company that tells you, we did a random telephone call, we phoned 1,000 people, and out of the 1,000, so many said MK, so many said this, so many said that.
How many samples did they look at though?
What
Because
samples?
9 out of 10, you're saying they went to different places. How many areas and spaces did they
No,
go to?
that's looking at it from a perspective of analytics. You're looking at analytics of the research sample.
You want to know the sample size.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go there. I'm saying to you, I want you to do it.
Okay.
You do it. You go into Pietermaritzburg. You go to the taxi ranks. Those are people that don't get polled or surveyed. Go to them. Don't look, look independent and tell them, which party are you considering to vote for? I see it every single day. I met a doctor the other day. He's a foreigner, doesn't know about politics in this country, and he's just here for about a month. And he asked me a question because he saw me wearing an MK shirt. He came up to me and he said, I just want to know about this MK. Tell me something about MK. I'm not from this country. He says, in his hospital, every single general worker, every clerical staff, and even among his colleagues, the doctors, majority of the doctors, the rest are all MK, all saying they're voting MK. What is MK all about? He asked me about MK. Then I met another lady. She was just walking on the street and she told me, you know what? She's wearing an ANC shirt. I'm wearing an ANC shirt, but I'm voting for MK.
Jeez.
She told me that because in my area, if I let people know, that's why I spoke to you about the water. So in my area, if I let people know that I am a MK, they won't give me water. The branch chairperson, ANC, won't give me water. And she's not the only one in her entire area. So the ANC is being misled by false support by its own members.
Sure.
Guys, do me a favor. You don't waste your time with DA and all the other. This election is a two-horse race.
Yeah.
It's MK and it's ANC. No other party. Do not even consider about any other party. It's after election day, after the elections are announced, you will then realize what I'm saying today.
What are we doing about the youth, though?
Yeah,
Visvin?
because that's in disarray.
Yeah.
always.
Right.
We've got the highest rate of unemployment.
Yeah.
The problem of the youth, and I want to be very direct and be very straight about it and tell you that it's a creation of their own. The youth have created their own problem because the youth of today are not like the youth of yesterday. The youth of yesteryear, they were the ones who were fighting in trenches. They were taking up far bigger issues about fighting apartheid, fighting for democracy, being in the front line of the war against injustices. But today, youth are not interested in those things anymore. They're more concerned about having a good time, and every now and again they might complain about something here and there. But where are they? When you talk about politics, stop asking what political parties will do for you. Instead, ask, what can I do in this political space? What value can I bring to this political space? You want your voice to be heard, get into the right forums and make your voice heard in those forums.
So being a colored guy or an Indian guy, how do you have a say in politics anymore? Because it's not open to everyone, which everyone knows.
No, not really. You see, the young people today think that the only time you get involved in politics is when you go and vote. That's a big mistake.
Yeah.
Your involvement in politics is actually every single day.
So
get involved in a political party.
With the MK then?
Yes.
How many seats are open for young Indian guys and colored guys at this point? Because at the MK right now, I know you and I know President Zuma.
Yeah.
Who's the other members that we don't know of?
Now you asked me a question. Let me answer you. You said, how can you as an Indian or colored, even a white, we have white members as well, that gets involved, become a member of MK. Our membership, there's no restrictions. You become a member.
But when you become a member, you don't want to be a number. We want someone who could be a spokesperson or someone who's in parliament. Like the DA have just put that young colored guy. I don't know if his name, I think his name's Jacobs or something like that.
I don't think you know.
He's 22.
Our spokesman is Shlamullo Ndlela. He's a very smart young man. He's actually the best spokesman from all political parties. Sure. His knowledge and depth of politics.
When you say young, what is his age?
I don't know what's his age, but he's a young guy.
Okay.
And our head of elections is Muzi Shingila, also another young guy. So we've got a lot of young people. But the thing is, you don't come into the party and say, I want to see the young people in positions, then I'm going to join this party. Now, then what happens is parties will put faces for you. They know what attracts you. They'll put a young person there, 22-year-old, who really has no control of anything, but he's just a face that they put up there. He becomes another like affirmative action candidate because they know they're going to get your vote for it.
Right.
But I don't think that's what you mean.
No,
What you
no,
want to do is you want to become part of engaging in the policy making structures
There you go.
that benefit young
There we
people.
go. There we go.
So the way to do it is not to come. I mean, I find this happening. People come and say, okay, I'm an Indian. I'm going to join, but tell me, what's in it for me? Where's my position here? Where are the Indians here? No, we do not. I'm not an Indian to begin with. Do not insult me by calling me an Indian. I'm not an Indian. I'm a South African. I don't want to go into that debate.
The problem with that is, though, in the current economy, if you go for a job interview, you're not a South African, you're an Indian.
And why is it that when you're going for a job, then you're not Indian? But if you want to talk about your culture and your heritage, then you become an Indian. You see what happens? We are we actually vacillate when it suits us. Then we say, don't you think the ideal situation should be that we are all South African? So why do we choose to be Indian when it suits us and then choose to be South African when it suits us?
I don't think we do that, though. I think in the current political climate in South Africa as a whole, you don't choose to be anything. You have to be something, especially when it comes to pursuing a career or finding investors for a company. You have a race attached to you. Unfortunately, as you're saying, we would love a space where we all regarded as South Africans. So we're touching on this topic when it comes to BEE and its policies. What does MK say about BEE?
Now, BEE, you must understand, is a necessity.
Okay.
If you look at our country currently, the largest unemployment rate, unemployment is black dominated. Poverty is black dominated. Everything that's negative is black. To give you some stats and figures, only 1% of white people are unemployed in the country today. Only 1%. But if you go to the black African community, it's about 60%. So when you talk about unemployment rate, the majority of the unemployed that's within that unemployment rate are black South African people. And unfortunately, the ANC has not been able to address that. We have to address it through legislation. And what I'd like to do is see us go back to the point where there was only two things. South Africa is a country that belongs to all who live in it, black and white. It doesn't say Indian, colored, African, and white.
It would be so nice if we were all just South African.
No, it can't be all South African because at the moment, you have serious disparities between the advantages that whites have, as opposed to the disadvantages that blacks have. And that has not been addressed. That has to be addressed. And we, you and I, we need to be at the forefront of championing that cause for the black African child in this country. So when President Zuma says that MK Party is going to be the party that's going to be the gold at the end of the rainbow for the black African child, he's really talking about where is the black African child today, 30 years after democracy? Jobless, homeless, familyless, no family, naked, no clothes, no prospects of any future. That has to change. If you want to be in a country, and what I appreciate about you, and I see it in your family as well, is that you don't see people through racial lenses.
Oh.
We don't want to see people through racial lenses. I like the cosmopolitan nature, the non-racial nature of your own setup as this podcast, your membership and so on. And for you...
Split 33, 33, 33,
I can see that. I can see that. That's what we want to do. But you can't do that when you go out as friends. And your black African friend, he can't come out because he doesn't have money to take a bus and come to the park that you guys are meeting at. So now it's that point.
It's called compre. We call it compre. The new generation. You see, if he doesn't have the money, then I've got to split it to bring him to the table.
What do you mean, Dane and you? What are you talking about?
No, he's saying if you can't make it to the party.
He didn't say my name. No. He didn't say my name.
Okay, if Dane can't make it, then we've got to split to bring. You see the black guy, bro. You see the black guy.
So what I'm saying is that basically, We got to deal with issues like poverty, deal with issues like joblessness. We've got to deal with this whole question of inequality. 30 years into democracy, we shouldn't be having this debate. It should have been resolved a long time ago. It's only then that we can have a country that we can truly say is we are all South African. It's no use us saying we are South African, and yet you have these glaring disparities that exist between race groups in the country.
You know what really upsets me sometimes? Being a young South African kid, sometimes you're driving home and you have the privilege to drive, right? And you pass a taxi rank and you see a guy who was definitely a youth during apartheid, and he's battling to walk. He's like stumbling, and he's waiting in a line to get into a taxi in the afternoon. And you just think, this guy has suffered then, and he's still suffering now. And there's been no change in that guy's career. I'm sure you've seen that before. If you're going into town, you see a really old person of color struggling to even move about, and you think, this guy suffered then, definitely, and he's still suffering now. And we haven't seen those changes or that group even reaping anything.
That is why MK is here. You summed it up so well.
Yeah.
That is the reason MK is here today. And there's never been more time for change as it is now. And the only party that can bring that change is the Umkhonto we Sizwe party. I urge all South Africans to exercise your right to go out and vote, and make sure that you vote to remove the ANC from power. The only party that is positioned to do that is the MK party, led by President Jacob Zuma.
I want to we're about to close now, Visvin. And I just want, there's just two main questions. What does the perfect South Africa look like for you? Not the MK party specifically, but for Visvin Reddy, the Visvin Reddy.
I want to see a South Africa where our country is no longer defined by race. I want a country where we see each other for who we are as human beings. I think first and foremost, and most importantly, we are human beings. I'm a Christian, and as a Christian, I believe that we are all equal, but I cannot talk about that equality when I see my Black African brothers living in such dire poverty. So I need to address the issue of the economic imbalances that have been created by apartheid. That needs to be addressed. I want to see a country that's prosperous for all South Africans. I want my kids, I want young people to have a fair opportunity, an equal opportunity to become successful. I want to see an end to poverty. I don't want people to be suffering. It pains me when I see people living in abject poverty, not having food to eat, not being able to go to school because they can't afford bus fare or taxi fare to go to school. Throughout my life, I fought against injustices. I don't believe it's a bad thing that I belong to different political parties. That in itself will tell you that I've held these parties to account and they have failed me. I will do that to even the MK. If the MK fails, I will leave the MK as well. Nobody is married to any political parties. For Pete's sake, politicians earn a good salary. I'm not here for a salary. I'm not here for a position in parliament. I'm here to see change. If you want to believe in my credentials, go back in my history and you'll see why I left political parties. If it was for position, if it was for money, I probably would have been in parliament today, enjoying the money and forgetting about the country I want to see. I haven't seen that country yet. I'm still fighting until I die to see, and I'll continue to fight for it. I'll fight what I believe to be exorbitant, illegal fuel price increases. I'll fight load shedding when I know it is being man-made, that load shedding is not created by God, that load shedding can actually end. I'll fight corruption at all levels. I will continue to do that. As long as I have breath in my body, I will fight corruption, I'll fight injustices, and I will fight inequality in any form.
Awesome. Wow. The election campaign, well, the elections are less than 30 days away now. Is MK ready? Are you guys prepared? Have you guys ticked off all the boxes you wanted to tick leading to the 29th of May?
On election day, I'm going to be at the beach.
Beautiful. After you voted, obviously.
Yeah, after I voted, I'm going to spend my day at the beach. Just
wonderful.
Contemplating a South Africa with President Zuma at the helm and the changes that we're going to bring about. The work is done. Our party has never been more positive. The feedback, the support on the ground is phenomenal, and I can only see victory. And so, in fact, it was very easy, this campaign for MK, because it was driven not from a top-down kind of an approach, but it was driven by people on the ground who just saw the need for change and said, we need an alternative to the ANC. And that alternative is Mkhonto we Sizwe, led by President Jacob Zuma.
And what does the 30th of May look like for the MK party?
No, not for MK party, for South Africa.
For South Africa.
The 30th of May is going to be a new South Africa, a really new South Africa. It's not the new dawn that Ramaphosa spoke about, but it's going to be new opportunities. New opportunities that's going to start coming up for every South African. It's going to be the end of inequality as we've known it. It's going to be the end of poverty. It's going to be a government that's going to be put in place that's by the people and for the people. That is what's going to happen after the 30th of May this year. It's a government that every South African is going to be proud of. It's not something that you'll want to go and burn a flag for, as a country's flag for. Certainly not. We want South Africans to take part in this and celebrate this government, because it'll be their government.
What's the newspaper for?
Oh, this is this week's Post newspaper. I wrote an
I thought we were going to have to burn that in case the lights go. Lighting in the studio.
It's an article called Uniting South African Communities for Transformation. I wrote an article here about the Mkhonto we Sizwe and the Indian vote in particular. So if you get a chance, get a copy of the Post.
On the Post.
And you can read it here.
Wow.
Awesome, awesome. And then lastly, please, guys, not to be confused with Visvin Reddy.
Yes.
This is the Visvin Reddy.
Visvin.
This is
Just
the
for
Visvin
clarity.
Reddy. I'm not the one with the money. I'm the one with the looks.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very
Loadshedding
much.
podcast,
Wow.
Visvin Reddy.